video, I want to explore the collapse into battle mentality over relatively nothing. But remember, when there's a overlay from the past that's impossible to see through, everything becomes life and death in that moment when that's all you can see. And so I'm, through the course of even just talking about this process in these videos, I'm becoming a little bit more conscious of the process. And one of the things I'm a little bit concerned about as I make this video and describe my process is on a reality level, there are so many people suffering from PTSD, particularly our veterans, who have absolutely hellish realities and hellish experiences from the past. And I have hellish emotions and experiences in an almost humorous, I mean, it's a joke what's going on, but it's not a joke how it feels. And so it's in this morning, the first thing was, we're in our hotel, and in order to get a good night's sleep, which is really key for PTSD and depression and that kind of thing, I've not set any alarm. The curtains are shut. And so the first question is, as I become dimly aware of consciousness, and there's a mild panic, and there's a mild grief, meaning I'm feeling it mildly, maybe it's grief around 6 or 7, and my thought goes to, there's a breakfast buffet that is quite exquisite that we've paid for, and I have no idea how I'm sleeping, because it will be anywhere from 8 a.m. until noon, depending on all the amount of noises that have gone on in the hotel and stuff the night before. So I'm in this dull state, and I hear in that dull state about 10 doors slamming, and I hear some carpets being cleaned outside, and I wish none of that was there, and I could just be alone in the sadness and the grief so that I could tend to it without being shocked out of it. And I stay there in a suspended place for a timeless time until I remember one of my safety mechanisms, one of my healing processes. Find a little boy in there and just pour love, blessing, caring, compassion, bring in light and caring from some kind of a higher being, because I am too scared to bring that. So I'll find a signature. And I don't care about the dogma, I don't care about religion, I don't care about the name. I'm looking for quality of care, kindness, beauty, and light that makes this part feel cared about and safe. And just pause a moment while our waiter and that's what I care about, and I'm able to pull up about 50% because I'm exhausted from the exhausting. It's exhausting to stay in that state, and it's a little bit scary. It's a little bit scary to go out into the day. I relate that to my very early childhood of being scared to kind of wake up in this reality where I might get hurt, shocked, traumatized, etc., or not. It's a little bit scary to come out in the day. And by the way, I see a correlatory connection between our first experiences as human beings coming into the world, what's the environment we're born into, what happens to us in the first couple of months, couple of years, and what it's like to wake up every morning. It's kind of a microcosm of that. And I have the same sense in going into a relationship, that the first few hours, days, etc. of relationship, there's that same experience of the template of what it's like to be born into these people with this culture and this reality that each of us experiences differently depending on our family and exact context. I reflect that, I'm annoyed with the banging. Nobody's put the rubber seals on the doors. And then, heaven of heavens, I'm so grateful that I have a positive focus to turn my attention to. So all this is going on. And I don't fully want to move my body because that's going to mean I'm going to feel all this more. But I have an incentive, which is I'm imagining holding Jen. My lovely, lovely, sweet, loving girlfriend who's a few feet away. Probably out of respect for me because she knows I get dissociated and feel irritable when I'm startled awake. Because again, in those early moments of sleep, there's a sense of waking up in fear. And so if she's the one waking me up, I associate that fear with her just because she's there in that moment. It's not fair, but I don't want to have that experience. And so I ask her to leave me alone, and I'll wake up when I'm ready. But it's so nice to, when I'm ready, realize, oh, she's there. She's just a foot away, waiting to be cuddled. And despite all the panic and humiliation and rejection and all that type of trauma that I have around most people, I have a second layer of human luxury and joy, which is knowing she's never rejected me. One of the highlights of her day are the times when I cuddle her. So there's this desperate need to kind of get out of this fear place and have some other focus, something to bond to that will block out all of these old feelings and memories that are there all the time, but we'll block them out. And she's there as a positive focus, meaning I don't feel guilty for bringing my girlfriend joy in her day. I feel like this is a healthy movement, like this is what was supposed to happen with my parents, deep bonding, and it didn't, and now it's happening. So my thought structure is in alignment with it, as opposed to I've got to, do something distractive that I'm not totally on board with, such as watch porn or, get manic around work to block it out. I'm really on board with mentally and emotionally feeling this is healthy, which in itself is healthy, because so often the coping mechanisms with PTSD don't fully line up with who we want to be. And so it cuts the freedom in half, or it cuts the effectiveness of the coping mechanism in half. Because, for example, if I curl up in a ball and make little noises and try and tune the entire world out, there's some part of my brain that's saying this is not the most effective way to get through the day. Come on, we've got to do something better, which means I'm at odds with myself. Having something like a beautiful woman who's loving to be cuddled, who's right next door, a foot away, and feeling the relief going through my body as I make the connection, and the chemicals that get released in the brain in those few seconds after touch and breathing together and having that line up, it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And it's why having this kind of relationship is the most important variable in my well-being, because it puts me at complete peace with myself in all areas except the fact that I know that I'm not in a healthy state about a third of the time. So it's my job to try and get to that point where I'm healthy 2/3 of the time and mitigate the impact of my disease the other point of the time. But back to this theme of fighting reality. And kind of discovering to my great delight in this morning that because there's one part of me that wants to rush compulsively and like make sure I can get to the buffet, and then there's another part that knows that just that rushing is going to start the whole day off in panic, and so I should, just tune out and get up when I'm ready. So here's a little miracle that then happens out of this push-pull, because Jen looks over and it's only 9:50, which means, and then the second rush is, does that mean I only have 10 minutes? Is this a hotel where it's going to cut off at 10, or is this a hotel where it's 10:30? I don't know. I decide not to panic, but there's that little moment of frenetic energy, and it's saved. I'm getting a little frenetic just reliving those moments. I'm going to clear all that out for a moment. And I'm just going to cut to a manic moment. So I'm wandering around the buffet, which has this, it's going to close energy hanging over it, which again magnifies to this kind of life or death panic, as opposed to just some food, and worst case scenario, we spend another $50 to buy some more food. But I'm kind of going through, and it's like I have this elaborate diet because I was raised vegetarian, and ever since I tasted meat, it just tastes, the textures don't agree with me. And then I overlay that with having watched a number of documentaries, and I think if I was going to eat meat, it would need to be healthy organic meat, not, fed with steroids and fish farm, stuff that it's questionably healthy. And there's a lot of concentrated chemicals, which the last thing that I want added to, my brain's challenge of sorting stuff out is a high chemical load. That's an aside, but of the 80,000 chemicals that are currently on the market, the chemical load is increasing generation by generation, and we're now finding newborn babies with a number of toxic chemicals as standard fare, that it's now standard that as a result of our practices, we've now got brand newborn babies where they'll test the blood in that new baby and find that not only are there toxic chemicals, but the chemical load is increasing with each generation. I don't want that. And so, anyway, so I'm vegetarian. I get runny nose, itchy eyes, and added irritation to my already easy irritable personality if I eat wheat or milk from a cow or wheat. Knowing that about a third of my well-being for the day will be pegged to that, because I'm in this predisposed state where as a result of PTSD, it's 10 times easier to get terrified, to be irritable, to be then critical, and then to cause friction in my relationships, which then further terrifies me because it brings back that point where I'm 1 to 2 years old, where someone who's really mad at me could kill me. And so it's this really complicated thing, and it's really hard to get anything. Stuff isn't labeled. So I feel like I'm in this, well, it kind of goes like this. So I look around, and I've got the scarcity going on of losing the buffet. I've got I won't even get into the perfectionism that goes on with trying to imagine and create the perfect breakfast, which is perfectionism is one of my escapes from hell. You know, the idea that if I can just create a few perfect things, I'll feel sane and in control and stuff. It's just a coping mechanism. And then I go into battle with the various things in the environment because it's noisy in there. So I want to get outside. So we take our laptop and gadget outside so we can set it down so we have our hands. The security person immediately removes it, so when we come back with our plate, we went to all this trouble to put our laptop right here. Now, it hasn't been stolen by any guests. We saw there weren't any people around, but it's been stolen by the security people. So now they're ruining the breakfast, you know, because by the time we get to the gadgets back, the toast will be cold, the eggs will be cold, blah, blah, blah. And then I ordered grated carrots that were big, but they bring this mushy grated carrots. And so I'm imagining my battle with the kitchen, which went on at this hotel before. So we're already starting to get into this war zone where the whole world is out to get me. Meanwhile, I've ordered a soya latte with crema. Oh yeah, and an espresso with crema, which is of course different. And of course they all say cream. Oh, you want creamer? I said, no, you don't know coffee. So I start to, and I'm arguing with myself, like, should I get into it again with this barista or let it go and see what they do? I come back and I see and I smell the soy latte, but it smells like cow's milk. And I've gotten sick before where they've said it's soy milk and then it's cow. And so I'm immediately suspicious. And I want to know where do you, I see the cow milk sitting right next to the bottle. I smell it, I look at it. I said, I don't believe a word of it. This is cow's milk. So I go and get the soy milk. And I tell them to, remake it. Meanwhile, they're removing all the labels, so it's hard to tell what's what, because we're a bit late. And we're sitting far outside because, as part of the conspiracy to ruin my life, they have covered in what used to be this beautiful outdoor area I would sit at. And last time we were here, they not only were covering in our outdoor sitting area, we had to listen to the banging, the welding, and the burning plastic, which was part of the Philippine technique of constructing, which is not very healthy. And it all boils down to very little, but it boils down to dread and grief and uncertainty and timelessness, relief, panic, paranoia, little contests where it's a physical thing, like my neck hurts, my chronic fatigue kicks in from all these panics. And I'm just like you and I are learning a little bit about this objectively as I'm talking about it, because so much of this is instinctive and grows slowly over time to where I don't even have an awareness that this is not everyone's reality, that everyone is not feeling in this corner of helplessness and humiliation and trapped. If someone, like, I asked for grated carrots. This is the little stuff that they gave me, which is almost mush. That took 15 minutes. And then I said small chopped carrots, as I'm trying to get in their mind what I mean by grated carrots. And what a healthy person doesn't realize is that having control over these tiny little things is what is giving me the illusion of control, when the reality is I have no control over all these trigger points. So there's this whole fear level of reality that in truth I have no control over, that I feel besieged by and helpless in all the time. I don't know how I'm going to wake up. I don't know how I'm going to get out of the state that I'm in when I wake up. I don't know how many minutes or hours in timeless space it's going to take me before I remember, oh, I can actually get out of this. And what gives me reassurance in this reality, in which I really am at a loss, because no one has ever validated it or helped me understand. They have all denied, hidden it, blocked it my whole life. Even as a child, when it was really happening, everyone was hiding it and refusing to, and punishing me and shocking me anytime I tried to talk about it, and shaming me and attacking me. Everyone, all the neighbors, nobody wanted to know that. So this has become the pattern where that reality is somewhat invisible to me, and then I'm coding that with this hyper micromanaging of things that are not that important, but they're so important, because if I have no control of this reality, and I ask for a soy latte and I get a milk latte and get sick, and I ask for small chopped carrots and I get little shreds and nobody knows the difference, and if that we put our laptop down and then somebody steals it immediately, and we sit here and then they immediately start making loud noises that traumatize me, and then the pool music has started to come up and we're woken up and the whole world is out of control. And this is the illusion of someone with PTSD, because the inner reality is not matching, so that's insane. The inner reality is not in focus or control, so that is helpless. The insanity in the culture is there, as it always has been, and that almost no one wants to talk about the old reality or the current experience of the old reality. And then so many people are dissociated in our modern reality, where we give the order to this person, another person carries it out slightly differently, and a third person says, I don't know what you're talking about, reinforcing the insanity. And then it all just feels overwhelming. I want to finish up and segue about the difference between see, all of this stuff is interconnected. It's an ecology, and it's generally self-referencing. So in the last video, I was just talking about how a beautiful morning in a beautiful hotel with lovely, friendly people becomes easily a paranoid battle And it's very easy to see that because there is enough of reality to support this sense of there's mild insanity in the reality, because there's a 30% deterioration in the idea of what's supposed to be happening and what's actually happening. Soy latte ordered, cow milk latte served, healthy picture of a nice day, getting sick actually happening. Then there's waking up in terror, but having nothing to be afraid of in the outside, except there is something to be afraid of, which is created by the PTSD itself. Namely, that because I'm sensitive and observant, there's a certain line where even if my complaints are legitimate, like I asked for this and I got this, I asked for this and I got this, there was no salt and pepper, this took 20 minutes, because you didn't give this, but, because you didn't do the bread at all, it's like, this is not what I ordered. Now by the time you take another 20 minutes to do that, the egg is cold, and there's just hardly a way to salvage the breakfast, which in the broad sense is very, very minimal in its life impact. And it's a little bit funny, or it's just the paradigm of a 300 staff system all interacting with guests in different layers where people are handing off responsibility rather than staying focused and one person is on point, tracking, following up, and just providing excellent service. But the real fear is that by collapsing into paranoia and becoming obsessive in certain moments because trust becomes this really big issue. So, I have this picture in my mind which happens a lot here at the Manila Hotel, which is I ask one person something, I see them casually mention half of the content to another person, who then delivers that to the other person who's actually executing. And then with a perfectly straight face, the third person comes back at me as if what they're presenting matches the reality of what I asked. And I'm furious at every point on the level. I'm furious that the first person didn't do it. I'm furious they didn't care enough about the detail to pass it to the next person. And then I'm furious that nobody realizes that this is a joke, meaning, of course, if you have 3 people involved and nothing written down, you're going to have a 30% deterioration. But when you're dealing with allergies and stuff like this, that's a big deal. You can't have a third of the time your stuff has allergies, allergy food in it. But for me, it's not just that. It's this really big deal to trust people, and it's this big reaction to be lied to or to have stuff. And so I go over the top in my response. And I'll start getting sucked into this micro battle where I've given this information. It's like, you didn't write it down. Write it down. No, get out your pad, write it down. Now show me what you've written down. Okay, good. Now are you going to do this, or are you going to give it to someone else? Okay, I don't believe you. I'm going to watch you. So you're going to walk over. Okay. Why aren't you doing this yourself? You said you were going to do this. nope, that's not what I ordered. I ordered this and this and this. And you can see that demeanor, which is bringing sanity to the PTSD, i.e. I don't want insanity in this world and the other world, so let's have at least one stable place to reside in. But you can also imagine how obnoxious this feels, and also how easy it is to be labeled and marginalized as that's just a control freak who's a guest you do not want to deal with, because everyone else smiles and just accepts the fact that 30% of what they ask for is not really real, or there's no salt and pepper on the table, and for some mysterious reason. But because there's this low-grade sense of survival and everything hinging on these little details, because that's the only thing that can be focused on. The whole reality is too big. It's too overwhelming. It's too terrifying. It's too unknown. So the response is, let's focus in on something that is small enough to be controlled, stable, and be managed. However, because those small things are now symbolic, they're now representative of the whole reality that's way too big and overwhelming to manage. They become hyper-potent in their message, is this a sane and safe world? And if I've zeroed in so narrowly that the only reality that exists is my soy latte, then if it isn't a soy latte and it's actually a cow latte, i.e. 50% of that micro-reality is the entire reality, then it means the entire reality is 50% unsafe and fucked up. On the other hand, if I can get the perfect soy latte, what it means in the way the brain works heuristically, where that is a representation of the whole day and the whole world, it means the day is okay, I'm safe. However, in most environments today, when I'm not in my own house, to get the perfect soy latte where I'm 100% that I'm safe in trusting that that's this perfect soy latte, probably involves legitimately upsetting one or two of the nice people around me who are not used to being crowded, micromanaged, scrutinized, looked at as if they're a terrorist. And so in a lot of cases, they're like, back off, and this actually gets to the beautiful part of being in Manila, because being a hospitality attitude culture and the best and most courteous people being hired, they don't actually do that. But I do it. I think, gosh, this is too much. This poor barista is, getting this message as if the whole reality of the universe depends on the perfect thing, and they weren't trained to make the perfect thing, and it's normally fine, and they don't understand what a big deal it is. And because of the modern structure where it's all about efficiency rather than relationships, I can't sit them down and tell them, this is a big deal because I have PTSD. Oh, you don't know what that is? Well, let me just tell you for an hour. I can't do it, because then I'm ruining the efficient economic system that this is all tied together in. And so it comes back to that big thing. Are we focused on creating efficient economic systems, or are we focused on creating compassionate, sane, healthy, and integrated relationships where everyone understands how and why, what's going on? And this actually heals PTSD, because this is actually part of my point which is that what PTSD does is it adds a tenfold level of intolerance to this level of impersonal, dissociative interaction in a modern life. But the dissociative, impersonal interaction in a modern life is not created by PTSD or an illusion. It's a reality that we've moved from small clusters of deep bonding with a few people who know us and trust us and understand how and why we've had what experiences because they've been there with us, to a reality where we're surrounded by thousands of people and not a single one knows what we've gone through, understands who we are, understands what we need and want and why, and provides any level of consistency and stability to the need for deep bonding. And this is why Jen is such an important part of my life. But it's also when no one is there, no one understands. And that's the life day after day after day. And I don't like myself the way I'm reacting to all this so intensely. And I'm getting feedback it's not okay. This is where suicides come in, because without being given the tools to understand why someone is behaving a certain way, they are watching themselves behaving this way. They're not free to change it. It's stuck in the biology of the brain. No one understands. There's a tremendous amount of judgment within the culture. That is a disease. And everyone is concurring that, including the individual, in this case me, that this is not okay. And everyone is wishing, including the individual, that this pattern would disappear, but the individual is completely powerless to change the pattern or understand it, because it's not even being talked about in the cultural dialogue. And then, bingo, the idea, okay, I'll kill myself because everyone will be happy. I'll be happy I'm not behaving too crazily. I'll be happy I'm not waking up miserable and have no reasons. And everyone else will be happy because they won't have this overreaction in their life to deal with. So everyone is happier. Why am I alive? And this is really important to understand, that suicide is often a kindness or a perceived kindness to the community as a result of the consistent messages 90% of the time that everyone, including oneself, would feel that the world would be a better place without them. It's a community service at that level. And when that's added to, there must be something fundamentally wrong with me, or my parents would not have tortured and terrorized and abused me. And all the garbage and all the hurt and all the enmity that has come towards someone. Because in this culture, we hate weak people. We hate them because we hate our own weakness and they remind us of it. We hate vulnerable people with a passion because we are incredibly vulnerable in a culture that despises and scorns vulnerability. We hate people who are emotional because we are a chauvinistic society in which any emotion is not as valuable as thoughts, strategy, and implementation, which are masculine. And so both men and women in the West hate emotion. And people with PTSD have 10 times more emotion, and they have no way out of it, so we hate them. It's really important to understand the level of hate that goes towards someone who has a terrifying reality, who has helplessness, who has emotion, who has qualities we don't like, who is needy. This level of hate from the inside because it's gotten internalized, and from the outside because it's the culture and it's the way we feel and treat about these same qualities in ourselves. And that this is amplified 3 times for men, because men are not supposed to be needy and emotional, because men are scorned and derided and cast off by women as mates for being needy and emotional. And because men are more isolated as defined by the independent man who doesn't need anyone, who's a real man. And as a result, is 2 to 5 times more isolated than women. It's not genetic that men end up in more PTSD. It is cultural. And it's just really important to understand these different levels in the whole equation and realize that in the entire dialogue, the entire conversation with the entire world, there is almost no one in the dialogue who is saying, I understand you, you're a good person, I get you, I want you to be here, even the way you are, I want you to be here. And this is our responsibility, and we have let you down. As a culture, as a community, as friends, we have let you down by not learning about this, by causing this, by standing by when it's happened. We have let you down. And we are going to stand by you and respond to heal the issue. That is not there, and it is shameful that it is not there. It is a level of willful ignorance, and it is also a level of passive ignorance, i.e. people don't know what they don't know. A lot of people are overwhelmed and actively hate the idea that there's more to know because they feel inadequate with what they already know they don't know. And they feel inadequate with what they know they don't know. And they feel adequate with what they know and are not able to actively and do a good job responding to. And so the idea that there's this whole other dimension with PTSD, it is far easier to hit the messenger. And this is why we have one veteran every 20 minutes killing themselves and feeling on some level they're doing the world a service. In fact, I believe that the greatest service we can do is to make noise and say, this is not okay. These people with PTSD are symptomatic of an unhealthy environment. The explosion in PTSD is not a result of an explosion in violence. On a global level, per capita, violence is on a steady downturn, which means that per capita, we are living in a less violent state than we have ever been, even as the media blows up. Like, just to give you a small example, I'm in Bangkok, living peacefully in my hotel. I have not seen a single anything, and my mom emails me. She loves to email around stuff that has nothing to do with her impact, that's way out there, and she's, I'm worried about the bombings. It's like, I haven't heard even a firecracker go off. If some bomb, I mean, it's a huge city. If some bomb went off in some building, there's 200,000 buildings. The odds are less that I'm going to be blown up in a bomb than that I'm going to be hit by a motorcycle that same day. But nobody's emailing around that. So that's the statistical reality. But the media, of course, will just play a bomb scene about 50 times in one day, amplifying it in our consciousness, and pretend like that's news or that that's the whole reality. The reality is that per capita violence is going down, but PTSD and insanity and mental illness is going up. This is the social environment that isn't repairing stuff. Because when you go from intense trauma and dissociation, and you come back to a tribe who understands you, who holds you, who loves you, who dances with you, who celebrates with you, who knows you, who calls back your spirit and says, we know you, welcome, we see you, we know who you are. There is no PTSD symptoms. When people are terrorized and brutalized by their own parents, and the entire community stands by and denies it, and we move into these isolated homes, and even in marriages sit and watch different TV channels in different rooms and don't talk to one another, that is a level of social breakdown that is so extreme that even small issues can cause searing PTSD because there's no repair. And we go into violent video games and get lost, and it's like, yeah, this is the world. And we lose touch with reality. So this is a cultural issue. I would say that 70% of the sickness that is PTSD exists in the environment, and that 30% exists in the individual, and that together it creates 100% PTSD. But what this means is that 70% of the cases of PTSD dissolve instantly when the environment is removed. And I've learned this by going to Thailand. Because Thailand is a much more emotional-centered, warm, present country. And without going into all the little nuances that I've analyzed that make the difference, the reality is that I feel 3 times more sane, 3 times happier, 3 times more welcome in Thailand with strangers. In other words, the way Thais treat American strangers is warmer by a factor of 3 than the way people in my hometown treat me. And as a result, I feel 3 times more welcome, 3 times more safe. Even just talking about it, my dignity increases. And as a result, I'm pouring all my discretionary income into Thailand. There's over $100,000 that's moved from the U.S. into Thailand, and business has shut down in honor of a culture that is 3 times more sane in this area. And this is where it gets back to economics and what I call fuzzy numbers. Because the idiots who cut out mental health, who cut out emotional and communication skills in school, who cut out art and think it's all about the numbers, are losing the economy. Even in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, once you've got security and survival, you look for belonging. Well, if belonging is 3 times better in Thailand than it is in your own country, your country loses out on all of its investment in the GDP you could be contributing. So, belonging, meaning, the sense of meaning is 3 times to 5 times stronger in Thailand. The sense of beauty and art, 6 times bigger in Thailand. So all the higher needs, it moves stuff to the place where it's, even when I had my biggest meltdown, where every single one of my relationships in the U.S. was completely letting me down, not getting it, and like, feel free to text me if you need some help. As if you even want to text when you're in a PTSD state. It's such a joke. A strange friend of a friend in Thailand who didn't speak English started to learn English so that she could sit with me and cry with me in Thailand. This is a married woman who's rich, who doesn't need money, who's a friend of a former girlfriend. The girlfriend was caused more PTSD than she took away. And this woman just poured out affection, song, presence, took time off work to cry with me without even being able to speak English, and she made me feel welcome. The one person in the world, a friend of a former girlfriend who doesn't speak English, who owes me nothing, gave me 10 times more than anyone who, by all, whether it's my customers, my employees. I told my employees, I am in a horrible shape. I can't deal with going to work. That's why I've got to go to Thailand. I told some of my customers. Some of them said, how's it going? I said, it's all I can do to barely show up on the job today with what's going on. And they're saying, great, keep it up. And walk on by. They don't even register that I haven't filled in the socially acceptable fine. And then friends are busy or want to connect in this way that's dissociative and creates a little bit of a bond and then rips it apart and leaves me wide open, as opposed to containing and holding me and helping me calm back down and get back to a neutral state. I had to go to Thailand. I had to be really smart to find, it's hard. It's not like every Thai woman is like that, but the percentage is 10 times higher. So that's a little bit about how much is in the, and then this stuff clears up. I am just so lucky because I can do it. I can analyze this stuff. I can look at the data. I can say every single time I go to Thailand, I'm instantly 3 times happier. I can analyze why. And I have this incredible luxury of being able to go there. But most people in the West do not have the luxury. And this is why I'm making these talks. It's for you. I get to understand myself a little bit more with these videos. But these talks are for all the teenagers who have this stuff going on, but they don't have the articulating skills. These are for the parents who want to know what's going on and don't have the empathy skills to discern it without words. These are for the therapists who are trying to figure out how to be and what's going on with patients who are too ashamed because of the intensity of cultural shame at men for having feelings, that this is what's actually going on in these silent men who look so sad and who are so ashamed. They have nothing to be ashamed of. The culture who has shamed them for being human enough to feel has a lot of atonement to do, particularly to our veterans. So these are for you. And the intensity of my pain has finally reached a point where it's not acceptable that this is going on for other people who have less resources. We will pay a huge financial cost. It's already a joke that it costs roughly $80,000 a year to incarcerate 5% of our population. It's a joke because that $80,000 to incarcerate one person could have been spent on 1,000 on 80 people preemptively. We are not innately sick, violent, unhealthy people. We have to be bludgeoned and infected in an unhealthy environment before we reach that state. That's the reality. And for every person we incarcerate, we make a number of sick people. We make the incarcerated person sicker in many cases. We make the jail employees sicker because when you treat people inhumanely, there's a part of our humanity that is lost. There are children being born every day and all around us who are desperate to feel special, to feel safe, to feel loved, to feel like they can talk about their most vulnerable feelings and be heard and understood and cared about. Those are the people who, if they do not have, as many people with trauma and PTSD report in studies, a single adult growing up with whom they felt safe talking about this with. Not a single one. In their whole childhood. I'm meeting women in their 20s who I'm the first person they've talked with about some of their abuse. Because they knew accurately that they would be shamed by their family, would embarrass their family, their parents and stuff might hate them for it, embarrass the family, would inconvenience them, it would make their mom late for work, and it would. And we've got to get real about this, that if we slice up our time so crazily that every single human experience is going to make someone late, if we do that and obsess about time, the message is, get out of here, humanity. We're on a schedule. It's the message to our own feelings, and it's the message to everyone in our reality who has intense feelings. That is exactly what I meant when I started broaching some of the most painful experiences that I was no longer willing to accommodate everyone's schedule by hiding. That is exactly what I meant. Oh, I could probably get you in, Tuesday, 2 weeks from now. How's that? It's like, you fucking idiot. I don't even know if I'm going to be alive Tuesday, 2 weeks from now. You going to show up or not? It's difficult. It's difficult. It's like, get out of here. I don't need friends like that. We need to understand the rage, the shame, because this is a huge message. It's like your life is worth an hour 2 weeks from now. And when you have all of your friends saying that, it's a joke. Why would you stay alive for them? We need to understand the health in this rage.